Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a truly perplexing corner of ancient Egyptian medicine, a world where the lines between cure and curse were wonderfully, bewilderingly blurred. Imagine, for a moment, the searing sun on your brow, the dry, dusty air catching in your throat, and a headache, not just a dull throb, but a relentless, pulsating drumbeat behind your eyes. You're in ancient Egypt, far from the soothing balm of ibuprofen or the comforting darkness of a modern bedroom. Your head feels like it's being hammered by a particularly enthusiastic sculptor, and relief seems as distant as the stars at midday. What would you do? What could you do? You'd probably try anything, wouldn't you? Even if anything involves something slithery and scaly from the murky depths of the Nile. Yes, tonight we're exploring the absolutely wild, slightly squishy, and surprisingly widespread use of crocodile-based remedies, specifically focusing on how the ancient Egyptians attempted to banish those stubborn headaches using, well, crocodile dung. You probably wouldn't survive a single day if you had to rely on their pharmacy, but tonight we just need to relax and let the absurdity wash over us. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, maybe share your location and local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is drifting off to. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking along the banks of the Nile, the very lifeblood of ancient Egypt, a river teeming with mysteries and, as it turns out, medical marvels. Or at least what they considered medical marvels. The pain in your head is persistent, a nagging whisper that threatens to erupt into a full-blown roar. You've tried the usual, incantations to Ra, perhaps a cool compress of lotus leaves, but nothing truly cuts through the ache. Your neighbor, a wizened old woman who knows a thing or two about the river's secrets, suggests a remedy, a traditional cure that has been passed down through generations. She speaks of the great river beast, the crocodile, not as a terrifying predator, but as a walking, swimming pharmacy. It sounds absolutely preposterous, doesn't it? But remember, in a world without understanding of germ theory or neuroscience, where gods and spirits influenced every aspect of life, desperation often bred the most peculiar innovations. Ancient Egypt, a civilization renowned for its architectural grandeur, its intricate hieroglyphs, and its elaborate burial practices, also possessed a deeply complex, if sometimes baffling, medical system. This system was a curious blend of empirical observation, spiritual belief, and a healthy dose of what we might now call folk medicine. They were surgeons, bone setters, and herbalists, but they also consulted oracles, recited spells, and believed in the efficacy of various animal parts to ward off illness or cure ailments. You see, the ancient Egyptians didn't separate medicine from magic. They were two sides of the same papyrus scroll. A physician might prescribe a plant-based poultice while simultaneously whispering an invocation to Sekhmet, the goddess of healing and plague. It was all part of the same holistic approach to well-being. Your headache, meanwhile, remains. It's not a headache that responds to a simple nap. This is the kind of headache that makes you question your very existence, that dims the vibrant colors of the Nile, that turns the joyous chatter of the marketplace into an unbearable din. Ancient life was hard, and persistent pain was a common, often debilitating companion. Without the benefit of modern painkillers, even a simple headache could disrupt your ability to work, to provide for your family, or even to enjoy the most basic pleasures. Imagine trying to haul water from the river or grind grain with a head that feels like it's about to split open. It was a serious problem, and the solutions, as we're about to discover, were equally serious, even if they make us chuckle from the comfort of our modern world. Historians still argue whether the perceived success of these remedies was due to genuine physiological effects, the placebo effect, or simply the natural resolution of the ailment over time. So, with your head throbbing and your hope dwindling, you look to the Nile. This wasn't just a river to the ancient Egyptians, it was a divine gift, a source of life, fertility, and yes, a surprisingly diverse pharmacy. Think of it as their grand flowing CVS, stocked with all sorts of natural wonders, from the reeds they wove into baskets and papyrus to the fertile silt that enriched their fields. But beyond the obvious agricultural benefits, the Nile also offered creatures, lots and lots of creatures. And for a civilization that believed in the intrinsic power of every living thing, these creatures weren't just animals, they were potential ingredients for cures, or at least components in a grand experimental recipe for relief. You see, the ancient Egyptians observed their environment with an incredible eye for detail. They understood patterns, cycles, and the behaviors of the animals around them. This close observation, combined with a touch of animistic belief, led them to assign specific properties to various creatures. A quick, agile gazelle might be associated with speed and vitality, while a sturdy bull might represent strength and virility. And the crocodile? Well, the crocodile was an animal of immense power and mystery. It dwelled in the depths, a creature of both land and water, capable of immense destruction. Yet it also symbolized fertility due to its association with the life-giving Nile, and protection. It was both feared and revered, and its very essence, its unique properties, were believed to be transferable. It's in this fascinating intersection of observation, belief, and desperate ingenuity that we find the roots of their crocodile-based remedies. They weren't just throwing things at a wall to see what stuck. There was a certain logic, albeit a logic rooted in a worldview very different from our own. If a crocodile was powerful, perhaps its parts could transfer that power to the alien. If it was a creature of the watery depths, perhaps it held secrets to soothing the fiery pain within. It sounds like something out of a quirky fantasy novel, doesn't it? And for your chronic back pain, I prescribe a pinch of hippopotamus tooth. The Nile's bounty wasn't just limited to the more fearsome creatures. The lotus flower, which grew abundantly in the river's calm waters, was used for its supposed calming properties, often steeped into teas. The papyrus plant, though primarily used for writing, was also believed to have antiseptic qualities when crushed and applied to wounds. Fish, of course, provided nourishment, but certain species were also thought to possess medicinal attributes for various internal complaints. It was an ecosystem of healing, every plant and animal a potential ingredient in their ancient pharmacopoeia. Historians still argue whether certain observed biological effects were truly understood, or if the efficacy was purely coincidental with other factors, like the natural healing process or psychological suggestion. Imagine the scene: a physician, perhaps a swoonu, doctor, or even a priest healer, carefully collecting ingredients from the riverbanks. He wouldn't be wearing sterile gloves or carrying a clipboard. Instead, he'd have baskets and jars, his knowledge passed down through generations, often etched onto papyrus scrolls or temple walls. He might be gathering honey, known for its antiseptic properties, or minerals like natron, used for embalming but also in some topical applications. And then there's the distinct, slightly unsettling task of acquiring crocodile parts. It wasn't a casual stroll. Hunting a crocodile was a dangerous endeavor, demanding skill and courage. This wasn't something you'd pick up at your local drive-through pharmacy. You really had to commit to the cure. The use of animal products in ancient Egyptian medicine wasn't unique to crocodiles, nor was it uncommon in other ancient cultures. Bear bile, rhino horn, snake venom, these have all found their way into traditional medicines across the globe at various points in history. What sets the Egyptian approach apart, perhaps, is the sheer breadth and creativity of their concoctions. They weren't afraid to experiment, to combine the mundane with the exotic, the sacred with the seemingly profane, all in the name of alleviating suffering. And when that suffering was a persistent headache, something that could cripple an individual and make life utterly miserable, no ingredient, no matter how unusual, was off limits. You can almost picture the determined look on their faces as they gathered these ingredients, driven by the very human desire for relief. With your mind still reeling from the thought of sourcing crocodile parts, let's delve deeper into the specific concoctions. It wasn't just a general belief in the crocodile's power. Different parts of the animal were thought to possess distinct properties, each suited for a particular ailment. It's like a specialized reptilian pharmacopoeia. You might imagine a bustling ancient Egyptian apothecary, shelves lined not with glass bottles of brightly colored liquids, but with dried animal organs, powdered minerals, and bundles of fragrant herbs, all waiting to be mixed into a truly unique remedy. And somewhere amidst this collection, you'd find carefully preserved bits of crocodile. For your pounding headache, the most infamous ingredient was crocodile dung. Yes, you heard that correctly. The waste product of this formidable reptile was believed to hold potent medicinal qualities. Now, before your modern sensibilities rebel entirely, try to understand the logic. In a world where observation was key and superstition often filled the gaps in scientific understanding, things that were powerful or unusual were often deemed to be effective. The very ferocity of the crocodile, its ability to survive and thrive in a harsh environment, might have led them to believe that even its bodily excrements held a concentrated essence of its strength. It's a bit of a leap, certainly, but consider that many ancient cultures used animal excrement for various purposes, from fertilizer to building materials, so perhaps the idea of it as medicine wasn't as outlandish to them as it is to us. But the crocodile's utility didn't stop at its dung. Its fat was another highly valued ingredient. Rich in oils, crocodile fat was often used as a base for ointments and salves, believed to have soothing or protective properties. You might find it mixed with other herbs and applied topically for skin conditions, aches, or even to protect against the sun. Think of it as a very early, very exotic form of Vaseline, perhaps with a slightly stronger aroma. Its flesh was also consumed, not just for sustenance, but sometimes for its supposed medicinal benefits, particularly for strength or vitality. It's a good source of protein after all, and who doesn't feel a bit better after a hearty meal? Even parts like crocodile teeth and claws found their way into remedies. While less common for internal ailments like headaches, they might be worn as amulets for protection or ground into powders for various magical or medicinal applications, often related to warding off evil spirits or enhancing personal power. It's easy to chuckle, but remember, they weren't just treating symptoms, they were treating the whole person, body, and spirit. If a pounded crocodile tooth gave someone a sense of security and strength, perhaps that psychological boost contributed to their overall well-being. The preparation of these crocodile concoctions was an art in itself. It wasn't just about grabbing a handful of dung. There were specific rituals, precise measurements, and often other ingredients added to enhance the desired effect. Honey, for instance, a natural antiseptic and soothing agent, was frequently combined with more unusual components. Resins, oils, and various plant extracts would be mixed in, often to mask the less palatable aspects of the primary ingredient. Imagine the ancient equivalent of a particularly strong-smelling Vicks vapor rub, but made with, well, you know. Historians still debate the true extent of these practices. While medical papyri confirm the existence of such remedies, it's difficult to gauge their widespread use or effectiveness. Were they mainstream treatments or more akin to desperate last resort measures to try such an unconventional cure? One thing is certain, the ancient Egyptians were nothing if not resourceful, willing to explore every avenue, no matter how strange, in their quest for healing. And for your nagging headache, you'd be surprised what you might be willing to try. As you mentally recoil from the thought of crocodile-based medicine, let's turn our focus back to the tormentor itself, the headache. Today, if you feel that familiar pressure building behind your eyes, a quick trip to the pharmacy or even a rummage through your medicine cabinet can offer relief. You pop a pill, lie down for a bit, and often the pain subsides. But for the ancient Egyptian, a headache wasn't just an inconvenience. It could be a profoundly debilitating experience, a force that hijacked your entire day, perhaps even your week. Imagine living in a world where every task was physically demanding. You're tilling fields under a relentless sun, hauling water from the Nile, or perhaps chiseling hieroglyphs onto a tomb wall, a task requiring immense precision and focus. Now overlay that with a headache so severe it feels like tiny hammers are pounding inside your skull. The bright desert light becomes an enemy, every sound a jarring assault. You can't just call in sick and binge watch Netflix. Your livelihood, your family's sustenance, depended on your ability to work. A persistent headache wasn't just pain, it was a threat to your very survival and social standing. They didn't have the modern medical understanding of what caused headaches. There were no concepts of tension headaches, migraines, or cluster headaches stemming from neurological pathways or vascular issues. Instead, pain was often attributed to a variety of less tangible sources. Evil spirits, an imbalance of the humors, a concept that would later be more fully developed by the Greeks, the wrath of a god, or even simply bad air. If a demon was whispering agony into your ear, how would you fight it? Not with a simple aspirin, that's for sure. You needed something potent, something with symbolic power, something that could drive away the unseen forces causing your suffering. The physical symptoms of headaches, however, were universally recognized. The throbbing, the sensitivity to light, the nausea, these are sensations that transcend time and culture. So while their understanding of the cause was different, their experience of the effect was much the same as yours. This shared human experience of pain is what drove their ingenuity, no matter how peculiar the remedies seem to us now. It's a testament to the enduring human quest for comfort and relief. Think about the sheer resilience required to live with chronic pain in an ancient society. You might have a physician, often a priest or a specialist in a particular ailment like eye diseases or stomach complaints, who would try various concoctions, incantations, or even minor surgical procedures. But if these failed, you were left to endure, perhaps with a quiet resignation or a desperate hope that some ancient crocodile remedy might finally work. The quality of life was severely impacted, and the pursuit of relief would have been a consuming obsession for many. Historians still argue about the prevalence of chronic pain conditions in ancient populations, given the lack of specific diagnostic methods recorded in their texts. Beyond the physical suffering, there was also the social aspect. If you were constantly incapacitated by pain, you might become a burden on your family or community. There was no social safety net, no disability benefits. You were expected to contribute, so the stakes for finding a cure were incredibly high, much higher than simply missing a day at the office. This pressure, this absolute necessity, perhaps explains why they were willing to try such outlandish cures. When your well-being, your very existence depends on it, you become open to possibilities that a modern, comfortable society might dismiss out of hand. And so, with your head still pounding, you, the ancient Egyptian, would listen intently to the whispered promise of relief, even if that promise smelled distinctly of the Nile's less fragrant offerings.
So the stage is set. A throbbing headache, a desperate need for relief, and the Nile, a vast, murky pharmacopoeia. Now let's hone in on the star of our show, the specific, undeniably bizarre remedy, crocodile dung. You're probably picturing something rather unpleasant, and frankly, you're not wrong. But for the ancient Egyptians, this was not just waste. It was a potential panacea, particularly for that relentless headache. The logic, as much as we can decipher it, often stemmed from a concept of like cures like, or the idea that powerful animals yielded powerful medicines. The crocodile, a creature of immense strength, aggression, and longevity, was a symbol of raw, untamed power. Perhaps the very act of its digestion, the transformation of food into waste, was seen as a powerful alchemical process, leaving behind an essence of its vitality. It's a fascinating leap of faith, isn't it, to look at something so seemingly repugnant and declare it a cure? But when you're desperate, perspectives can shift dramatically. But how, you ask, was this particular ingredient deployed? It wasn't simply a matter of scooping it up and, well, applying it directly. The process was, of course, far more nuanced and, dare I say, artful in its own peculiar way. The dung would first need to be collected, presumably from fresh deposits along the riverbanks, perhaps even specifically sourced from certain types of crocodiles, though our records are vague on such distinctions. Then it would undergo a drying process. You certainly wouldn't want it fresh off well, you get the idea. Drying would make it easier to handle, less odorous, one hopes, and suitable for pulverizing. Once dried, the crocodile dung would often be ground into a fine powder. This transformation from raw material to medicinal powder was a common practice in ancient pharmacy, making ingredients easier to mix with liquids, apply as poultices, or even ingest. And this is where it gets truly interesting. For headaches, the powdered crocodile dung was typically mixed with other substances to create a paste or an ointment. Common additions included honey, which not only acted as a binding agent and a natural preservative, but also possessed its own well-known antiseptic and soothing properties. Resins, oils, or even sweet-smelling herbs might also be incorporated, perhaps to make the concoction slightly less pungent. The finished product, this peculiar paste, would then be applied topically. Imagine a small, sticky lump of this dark, somewhat granular mixture being pressed against your aching forehead, perhaps smeared gently onto your temples, or even placed on your scalp. The idea was that the healing properties would be absorbed through the skin, directly targeting the source of the pain. It's hard to imagine, with our modern understanding of anatomy and pharmacology, how exactly this was supposed to alleviate a headache. But then, they weren't thinking about blood vessels or neurotransmitters. They were thinking about banishing malevolent spirits or rebalancing the body's mysterious energies. Historians still debate whether this remedy was primarily symbolic, a powerful placebo, or if there were any unknown chemical compounds within the crocodile dung itself that might have had a physiological effect, even if unintended. Perhaps the mere ritual of preparation and application, the belief in its potency, was enough to trigger a psychological response that alleviated the pain. After all, the mind is a powerful thing, capable of influencing the body in profound ways. And for someone suffering from a relentless headache, even the faint hope offered by such a bizarre cure might have provided a fleeting sense of relief. You can almost feel the gritty texture and the faint earthy smell as it's applied, can't you? A truly immersive historical experience, if a somewhat aromatic one. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the preparation and application of this rather unique headache remedy. It wasn't a simple grab and smear operation, you understand. Like any good ancient pharmacist, the Egyptian healer would follow specific steps, almost like a ritual, to ensure the medicine was potent and effective. And for your throbbing head, you'd be watching with hopeful, albeit slightly grossed out anticipation. First, the procurement of the key ingredient. As we discussed, crocodile dung wasn't just lying around conveniently powdered. It had to be collected. Imagine the scene. A dedicated individual, perhaps a servant or an apprentice, carefully gathering fresh droppings from the riverbanks. They'd likely be looking for specific types, perhaps distinguishing between older, dried dung and fresher, more pliable material. The quality of the raw material surely mattered, even in ancient medicine. And you can bet there wasn't a pleasant aroma involved in this step. This wasn't a trip to the spice market. Once collected, the dung would undergo a crucial processing step, drying. This wasn't just about making it less squishy. Drying would reduce moisture, concentrate any active compounds, if they existed, and make the material stable for storage. You wouldn't want your precious headache cure to spoil, would you? This drying might occur in the sun, spread out on mats, or perhaps in a warm, dry room, carefully protected from insects and other contaminants. After drying, the material would be much easier to handle and process further. Next came the grinding. The dried crocodile dung would be pulverized into a fine powder.
This could be done using a mortar and pestle, grinding stones, or other manual methods. The finer the powder, the easier it would be to mix with other ingredients and, presumably, the more effectively its essence could be absorbed. This powdery form was common for many ancient remedies, allowing for various methods of application. Imagine the rhythmic sound of grinding, perhaps even a faint dusty cloud wafting through the air, carrying the scent of ancient remedies. Now for the truly fascinating part, the mixing. The powdered crocodile dung rarely stood alone. It was typically combined with other ingredients, often those with known soothing or binding properties. Honey was a very popular additive. Not only did it act as a natural adhesive holding the paste together, but honey was also revered for its antiseptic qualities and its ability to soothe inflammation. Its stickiness would ensure the paste adhered to the skin, and its natural sweetness might even mask some of the less desirable odors, though that's probably wishful thinking. Other common additions might include resins derived from various plants known for their aromatic and sometimes medicinal properties. Oils such as olive oil or castor oil could be incorporated to create a smoother consistency, making the paste easier to spread and potentially aiding in absorption. Sometimes aromatic herbs or minerals might also be added, either for their perceived medicinal benefits or simply to improve the overall sensory experience, though that's a low bar when dealing with this particular ingredient. Finally, the application. With the paste prepared, it would be carefully applied to your aching head. The exact method could vary. It might be smeared directly on the forehead, massaged gently into the temples, or placed as a small poultice over the area of most intense pain. The idea was to create direct contact, allowing the healing properties to seep into your body. You'd likely feel a cool, perhaps slightly gritty sensation as the paste touched your skin, followed by, well, you'd be hoping for relief. The instructions might even include specific incantations to be recited during application, adding a layer of spiritual efficacy to the physical remedy. Historians still debate whether the ritualistic aspects of these cures were as important as the physical ingredients themselves, providing a potent psychological boost. So, while your head pounds, imagine yourself lying on a mat, perhaps in a dimly lit room, as a gentle hand applies this truly ancient and truly peculiar remedy. You might close your eyes, breathe deeply, and surrender to the slow, peculiar ritual, hoping against hope that this strange gift from the Nile will finally bring you some peace. While crocodile dung might be the headline act of ancient Egyptian animal remedies for headaches, it was far from the only creature-derived cure in their medical arsenal. The Nile and the surrounding desert were teeming with life, and virtually every animal, from the majestic to the minuscule, was thought to hold some secret to health and healing. It's like their version of a grand safari, but instead of cameras, they brought pestles and mortars. Take, for instance, the hippopotamus. This enormous, powerful beast, also a resident of the Nile, was revered and feared. Its fat was sometimes used in remedies, similar to crocodile fat, primarily for its moisturizing or soothing properties when applied topically to skin ailments or aching joints. Its teeth, too, like those of the crocodile, might be incorporated into magical amulets or powdered for various concoctions, probably due to their sheer size and strength. You can imagine the effort it would take to acquire these ingredients. It wasn't a casual stroll to the local market. Then there were the more mundane but equally utilized animals. Snakes, for example, despite their venom, were associated with healing and rebirth, perhaps due to their ability to shed their skin. Snake fat or even dried snake skin might be used in ointments for skin conditions or believed to aid in rejuvenation. And who could forget the humble donkey? Donkey milk was considered a valuable remedy for various ailments, particularly respiratory issues and fevers, probably due to its perceived nutritional value and gentle nature. It's still used in some traditional medicine today, so perhaps they weren't entirely off the mark with that one. Even insects played a role. Bees, for instance, were incredibly important. Honey, as we've seen, was a staple in many remedies due to its antiseptic qualities. But bee stings were also sometimes used for their inflammatory properties, perhaps in a very early rudimentary form of apitherapy for conditions like arthritis. Though this would have been a rather painful treatment, you might just opt for the headache over a bee sting facial. The Egyptians also made use of animals in symbolic ways. The scarab beetle, a symbol of rebirth and regeneration, was often worn as an amulet for protection and good health, reflecting the belief that the symbol itself could impart healing power. These weren't necessarily ingested, but their presence was thought to influence well-being. It's a fascinating blend of the practical and the spiritual, where a charm might be as potent as a poultice. Historians still argue about the precise demarcation between magical practices and empirical medicine in ancient Egypt, as the two were so intricately woven together. Even the animal kingdom's less glamorous inhabitants made their way into the ancient Egyptian pharmacy. Lizards, frogs, and various birds might have their parts incorporated into remedies for ailments ranging from eye infections to stomach problems. The specific choice often depended on the animal's perceived attributes or behavior. For instance, a creature known for its keen eyesight might be used in an eye remedy, following that like cures like philosophy. This widespread use of animal products highlights a key aspect of ancient Egyptian thought: the interconnectedness of all living things. They saw their world as a vast tapestry where humans, animals, plants, and even the gods were all part of a grand cosmic order. Every element held potential, and every illness required a unique, often multifaceted approach, drawing on all the resources available. So while your headache might be screaming for modern pain relief, you'd be in an ancient world where a visit to the animal pharmacy was a perfectly reasonable step on the path to feeling better. It's a reminder that healing throughout history has always been a journey of discovery, even if some of the discoveries were memorable.
Beyond the curious world of animal-based remedies, the ancient Egyptians also relied heavily on more familiar, plant-based potions to soothe their ailments, including your persistent headache. While crocodile dung might capture our modern imagination, the bulk of their daily medical practice involved sophisticated herbalism, reflecting a deep understanding of the botanical world around them. It's like switching from a bizarre specialty store to a well-stocked, if still quite ancient, health food shop. Imagine a bustling marketplace, not just with vendors selling grain and textiles, but also apothecaries offering bundles of dried herbs, fragrant resins, and jars of plant oils. The fertile banks of the Nile, with its diverse flora, provided a veritable natural pharmacy. They cultivated a wide variety of medicinal plants, some of which we still recognize today for their therapeutic properties. One of the most commonly cited plant-based remedies was willow bark. You might recognize this name because it contains salicin, a compound very similar to the active ingredient in aspirin. The ancient Egyptians would have brewed it into a tea or applied it as a poultice to reduce pain and inflammation. So, while you wouldn't find a bottle of Egyptian aspirin on the shelves, they were, in a way, accessing a similar pain-relieving compound. This is a fascinating example of ancient empirical observation leading to effective remedies, even without understanding the underlying chemistry. Poppy plants were another significant botanical. From these, they derived opium, a powerful narcotic that could certainly alleviate severe pain, including intense headaches. Opium would have been used sparingly and with great caution, given its potent effects, but its ability to induce a state of calm and reduce suffering would have made it invaluable for particularly agonizing conditions. However, the risk of addiction would have been an unacknowledged but very real consequence. Beyond pain relief, many other plants served various medicinal purposes. Aloe vera, often used for skin ailments and burns, was revered for its soothing and healing properties. Mint and thyme were used for digestive issues and respiratory complaints, often brewed into teas or inhaled as vapors. Garlic and onions, staples in their diet, were also recognized for their purported antiseptic and immune-boosting qualities. You might find them prescribed for infections or to ward off illness, though perhaps not for your headache directly unless it was accompanied by a fever. The preparation of these herbal remedies was often quite intricate. Plants would be dried, crushed, steeped, boiled, or fermented to extract their active compounds. These extracts might then be mixed with other ingredients like honey, wine, beer, or oils to create potions, poultices, enemas, or suppositories. The physicians were skilled in understanding the specific parts of the plant to use, roots, leaves, flowers, or seeds, and the best methods for preparation to maximize their effectiveness. It wasn't simply about throwing a few leaves into a pot, it was a practiced and refined craft. Historians still debate the true efficacy of many of these plant-based cures. While some, like willow bark, clearly had a physiological basis for their effectiveness, others might have relied more on the placebo effect or simply assisted the body's natural healing processes. The sheer volume of recipes found in ancient medical papyri, however, suggests a widespread reliance on and belief in the power of the botanical world for healing. So, while the idea of a crocodile dung cure might be more memorable, it was often the more conventional plant-based potions that offered everyday relief to the ancient Egyptians suffering from a headache. You might even find yourself reaching for a soothing cup of willow bark tea, a truly timeless remedy.
As you ponder the efficacy of ancient Egyptian herbal remedies, it's crucial to remember that their understanding of illness wasn't solely physical. For the ancient Egyptians, medicine and magic were not separate disciplines. They were intricately intertwined, two threads woven into the fabric of healing. Your headache, for instance, might not just be a physiological imbalance. It could be the insidious work of a malevolent spirit, the curse of an enemy, or even a divine punishment. And if that's the case, a simple plant poultice might not be enough. You'd need something more ethereal. This blend of magic and medicine meant that a healer might be both a physician skilled in setting bones and a priest capable of reciting powerful spells. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, one of the oldest surviving medical texts, showcases surprisingly advanced surgical techniques, but even alongside these empirical observations, you find incantations and magical formulas intended to aid recovery. It's a testament to a worldview where the unseen forces were just as real and impactful as the visible ones. Imagine consulting a healer for your headache. They might examine your symptoms, feel your pulse, perhaps even inspect your eyes. But then they might also ask if you've recently angered a god or if you've encountered a particularly ominous dream. The cure, therefore, wouldn't just involve a physical remedy like crocodile dung paste or willow bark tea. It would almost certainly incorporate amulets, charms, and incantations. Amulets, small objects worn on the body or placed near the afflicted area, were believed to possess protective or healing powers. For a headache, you might be given an amulet depicting the goddess Sekhmet, who could both bring and cure disease, or perhaps a scarab beetle, symbolizing rebirth and renewal. These weren't just decorative, they were active participants in the healing process, acting as spiritual shields against the forces causing your pain. Incantations were equally vital. These were often lengthy poetic recitations, invoking various gods or mythical beings, describing the ailment and commanding it to depart. The words themselves were thought to have power to resonate with the divine realm and influence the physical world. A healer might whisper a spell over the applied poultice, believing that the words would activate the remedy's true potential. It's like the difference between just taking a pill and taking a pill that a revered sage has blessed for you. The psychological impact can be profound. Historians still argue about the precise balance between the psychological effect of these rituals and any genuine physiological benefits of the remedies. Sometimes the magical remedies ventured into even more symbolic territory. For example, some spells involved writing an illness's name on a piece of papyrus, then destroying it, symbolically eradicating the ailment. Or figures made of wax might be used in sympathetic magic, representing the illness or the evil spirit, which would then be ritually destroyed. It's a bit like a very elaborate ancient version of voodoo, but with healing as the goal. This intertwining of magic and medicine highlights a fundamental difference in ancient Egyptian thought compared to modern Western science. They didn't see the body as a purely mechanistic system. Instead, it was a vessel influenced by spiritual forces, cosmic alignments, and divine will.
A headache wasn't just a misfiring of neurons. It was a disharmony, a disruption in the cosmic order, and therefore required a multifaceted approach that addressed both the physical and the spiritual dimensions. So, as you lay there hoping your crocodile dung paste does its work, you'd also be trusting in the power of ancient prayers and the protective aura of your amulet. It's a world where every symptom had a story, and every cure was a dialogue between the seen and the unseen. Now, who exactly were the individuals documenting these fascinating, if sometimes foul, medical practices? The knowledge of crocodile dung cures and willow bark potions wasn't just floating around haphazardly. It was meticulously recorded. Enter the scribes and the physicians, the intellectual backbone of ancient Egyptian medicine. These weren't just random folks. They were highly trained specialists, and your headache relief depended on their careful record-keeping. Imagine being a medical scribe. You'd spend your days not on the battlefield or constructing pyramids, but in the quiet, dusty chambers of a temple or a medical school, painstakingly copying hieroglyphs onto papyrus scrolls. These scrolls, like the famous Ebers Papyrus and Edwin Smith Papyrus, are our primary windows into their medical world. They detail symptoms, diagnoses, and hundreds of recipes for everything from a simple cough to, yes, that nagging headache. The role of the scribe was absolutely crucial. They were the librarians and archivists of ancient knowledge. Without their dedication to preserving these texts, we would know far less about the daily lives, beliefs, and medical practices of the Egyptians. They might not have been the ones applying the crocodile dung, but they were the ones ensuring the precise instructions for its preparation and application were passed down through generations. You can almost picture them, bent over their work, perhaps occasionally fanning away a stray fly, utterly focused on their intricate task. But not all medical knowledge was purely empirical. As we've discussed, magic played a significant role. And here's where the concept of scapegoats sometimes comes into play, not in the direct sense of blaming an individual, but in the ritualistic transfer of illness. While not a direct cure in the physical sense, the idea of externalizing an ailment onto something else was a powerful psychological tool. For a persistent headache, a spell might involve transferring the pain to a clay figure, an animal, or even a piece of food, which would then be discarded or destroyed, symbolically taking the illness with it. It's a very human attempt to control the uncontrollable, to give form to unseen suffering. These scribes and physicians were often members of the educated elite, associated with temples or the royal court. They underwent rigorous training, learning anatomy through observation, though human dissection was generally forbidden, studying the properties of plants and animals, and memorizing vast numbers of spells and incantations. They were truly multidisciplinary, bridging the gap between what we now call science and religion. Historians still argue about the exact curriculum and training methods employed in these ancient Egyptian medical schools, given the limited explicit descriptions. Interestingly, medical specialization was a thing, even back then. You might have doctors for teeth, doctors for eyes, or even shepherd of the anus, a rather specialized proctologist. So, for your headache, you might consult a general practitioner or someone who specialized in ailments of the head. Though thankfully, there wasn't a specific headache doctor who deals only with crocodile dung. That would be quite a niche. These medical texts weren't just lists of ingredients. They often included precise instructions on how to administer the remedies, the dosage, and even the incantations to be recited. It suggests a structured, methodical approach, even when the ingredients seem fantastical to us. They were trying their best with the knowledge and worldview they possessed, attempting to bring order and predictability to the chaotic experience of illness. So, as you endure your ancient headache, remember the tireless work of those scribes, diligently recording the very remedies that might, just might, bring you some relief.
So, with all these peculiar remedies laid out, a crucial question lingers in your ancient, aching mind. Did any of it actually work?
Were the ancient Egyptians just blindly experimenting, or was there some tangible success that fueled their faith in crocodile dung, willow bark, and whispered incantations? This is where the lines between genuine efficacy, the powerful placebo effect, and sheer desperation become wonderfully, frustratingly blurry. For some remedies, the answer is a resounding yes. As we touched upon, their use of willow bark for pain and inflammation was remarkably astute. Unbeknownst to them, they were tapping into the analgesic properties of salicin, the precursor to aspirin. So, if your headache was a dull ache that responded to an anti-inflammatory, then that willow bark tea might have genuinely brought you some relief. Similarly, honey, a common additive, possesses well-documented antibacterial properties, making it an excellent choice for wound care and a soothing agent for topical applications. Here, their empirical observation directly aligned with what modern science would later confirm. However, for other treatments, particularly those involving more exotic ingredients like crocodile dung, the scientific basis for direct physiological effect is, shall we say, less evident. It's highly unlikely that ingesting or topically applying animal waste would have a direct biochemical impact on the mechanisms causing a headache. This is where the power of the placebo effect truly comes into play. Imagine you're suffering intensely, and a respected healer, armed with ancient knowledge and a ceremonial air, offers you a potent, mysterious cure. The sheer belief that it will work can, for many people, trigger the body's own healing mechanisms, releasing endorphins and altering pain perception. The more bizarre or difficult the remedy, the more powerful the belief in its efficacy might become. If I'm willing to put that on my head, it must be strong, you might think. Furthermore, many ailments, including headaches, are self-limiting. They come and go on their own. So, if you applied crocodile dung paste and your headache naturally subsided a few hours later, you would naturally attribute the relief to the remedy. Correlation, in their minds, equaled causation. It's a fundamental human bias that's hard to overcome, even with all our modern scientific rigor. Historians still argue whether the apparent success of these ancient remedies was due to genuine physiological effects, the powerful placebo effect, or simply the natural resolution of the ailment over time. Then there's the psychological comfort provided by the ritual itself. The act of seeking help, the healer's confident demeanor, the specific preparation of the remedy, and the accompanying spells and prayers, all these elements could provide immense psychological reassurance. In a world full of unknowns and constant threats, the structured approach to healing, even if based on what we now consider superstitions, offered a sense of control and hope. And for someone in pain, hope can be a powerful balm. You'd feel listened to, cared for, and that alone could make a difference. So, while your headache might or might not have been banished by the peculiar properties of crocodile dung, the experience of the cure would have been profoundly immersive. You were participating in an ancient healing tradition, relying on centuries of accumulated wisdom, both practical and magical. And sometimes, perhaps, that was enough. You'd probably come away feeling, well, certainly something, even if it wasn't outright relief. Perhaps a newfound appreciation for modern medicine, should you ever find yourself time-traveling back to your own era. As you slowly recover from the lingering scent of ancient remedies, it's worth considering that the ancient Egyptians weren't alone in their peculiar medical practices. Indeed, a fascinating aspect of historical medicine is how many cultures across vastly different geographies and eras arrived at remarkably similar, bizarre, yet understandable solutions to human suffering. Your headache might have prompted a crocodile cure in Egypt, but elsewhere, equally strange remedies awaited. It's like a grand cross-cultural game of medical truth or dare. Take, for instance, ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization in modern-day Iraq. Their medical texts, written on clay tablets, also describe remedies that combined herbal knowledge with incantations and animal products. You might find treatments involving powdered animal horns, parts of various insects, or even human excrement for certain conditions. Their understanding of illness was also deeply tied to supernatural forces, with demons and evil spirits often blamed for disease. So, while the specific ingredients might differ, the underlying philosophy, a blend of the physical and the spiritual, would feel oddly familiar to an Egyptian healer. Moving westward to the nascent medical traditions of ancient Greece, you'd encounter a gradual shift towards more rationalistic thought, famously championed by Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine. Yet, even in Hippocratic medicine, which emphasized observation and the balance of humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, you'd still find some practices that would raise a modern eyebrow. Certain animal parts were used, though perhaps less extensively than in Egypt, and dream interpretation played a role in diagnosis. They also believed in bloodletting and purging to rebalance the humors, procedures that, while seemingly drastic, were widely accepted for centuries. Imagine a headache so bad, you'd agree to have some of your blood drained. Across the vast distances to ancient China, traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, also developed a sophisticated system blending herbalism, acupuncture, and philosophical concepts like qi, life force, and yin and yang. While known for its refined use of herbs, TCM also utilized animal products, some quite exotic, such as tiger bones, though thankfully this practice is now widely condemned and illegal, or deer antler velvet, often for their perceived energetic properties or to address specific imbalances in the body. You'd find remedies involving ground minerals and a profound understanding of pressure points, all aimed at restoring harmony to the body. Even closer to our own time, in medieval Europe, medicine remained a curious mix of classical texts, folk remedies, and strong Christian beliefs. Bleeding, purging, and the application of bizarre poultices containing everything from pigeon dung, a distant cousin to our crocodile remedy, to powdered precious stones were common. Diseases were often seen as divine punishment or the work of the devil, leading to an emphasis on prayer and penitence alongside physical treatments. If your headache lingered, a pilgrimage might be prescribed alongside a herbal concoction. Historians still argue about the diffusion of medical knowledge across these ancient cultures. Was it independent invention, or were there shared ideas and trade routes that spread these peculiar practices? It's likely a bit of both, a testament to the universal human experience of illness and the universal drive to find relief no matter how unconventional the method. So, while you might feel a pang of sympathy for your ancient Egyptian counterpart, take comfort in knowing that medical oddities were a global phenomenon, making your specific headache part of a truly grand, bizarre historical tapestry.
Having glimpsed the global tapestry of strange remedies, let's bring our focus back to your pounding head and the ancient Egyptian approach, specifically through the lens of modern medical insight. What, if anything, can 21st century science tell us about those ancient practices, especially the ones that involve, shall we say, less conventional ingredients? It's like putting a finely tuned MRI machine in a dusty ancient apothecary. From a purely pharmacological perspective, the verdict on crocodile dung for headaches is predictably not enthusiastic. Modern chemistry hasn't identified any compounds within crocodile excrement that would directly alleviate pain or target the neurological mechanisms of a headache. There are no known analgesics or anti-inflammatories lurking in its biological makeup that would be relevant to human pain relief. If anything, there might be a risk of infection from bacteria or parasites, which would certainly make your headache the least of your worries. So, on a purely chemical level, it's a thumbs down from modern medicine. However, modern medicine also understands the profound impact of the placebo effect, a phenomenon we touched upon earlier. This isn't just all in your head in a dismissive way. It's a powerful and well-documented physiological response. When you believe a treatment will work, your brain can release natural pain-relieving chemicals like endorphins, or it can alter your perception of pain. The ritual, the belief in the healer's power, the very act of doing something to address the pain, all these elements could have triggered a significant placebo response in the ancient Egyptians suffering from a headache. Modern clinical trials meticulously account for the placebo effect precisely because of its undeniable influence on perceived efficacy. Furthermore, consider the nutritional status and overall health of the ancient Egyptians. Chronic headaches can sometimes be linked to dehydration, malnutrition, or stress. If a remedy, even one as odd as crocodile dung paste, was prepared with other beneficial ingredients like honey, which has sugars and some nutrients, or applied in a calming, ritualistic manner that encouraged rest, it's conceivable that these secondary factors contributed to a feeling of improvement. It's not the dung working, but perhaps the brief respite, the hydration, or the psychological reassurance. Modern medical understanding also highlights the complexities of pain itself. We know that pain isn't just a simple signal from damaged tissue. It's a complex experience modulated by emotions, expectations, and context. A headache, while rooted in physical processes, can be exacerbated by anxiety or stress. If the ancient remedies, even the bizarre ones, offered a sense of hope and security, they might have indirectly helped to reduce the perceived intensity of the pain by addressing these psychological factors. Historians still argue about the precise interplay between physical and psychological factors in ancient Egyptian healing. So, while we can confidently say that modern medicine would not prescribe crocodile dung for your headache, understanding the ancient practice helps us appreciate the holistic nature of their approach. They were treating not just the physical symptom, but also the emotional and spiritual distress that accompanied illness. It's a fascinating contrast, our precision pharmacology versus theirs broad, ritualistic, and often symbolic treatments. The good news for you as a modern individual is that relief for your headache is now far more predictable and significantly less odorous. So, what is the lasting legacy of these peculiar ancient cures, especially when it comes to something as mundane yet debilitating as a headache? It's certainly not that modern doctors are prescribing crocodile dung suppositories for migraines, thankfully. Instead, the enduring impact lies in what these practices reveal about human nature, medical progression, and the fascinating journey of healing throughout history. Firstly, these ancient remedies highlight the universal human quest for relief from suffering. No matter the era or culture, pain is a common experience, and people will always seek ways to alleviate it. The ancient Egyptians, facing limitations we can barely imagine, were incredibly resourceful, using whatever was at hand, be it a plant, an animal, or a powerful incantation. This inherent drive to heal, to comfort, and to understand the body is a constant thread running through all of human history. Secondly, the study of ancient medicine, even its stranger aspects, underscores the evolution of scientific understanding. We can look back at practices like using crocodile dung and chuckle, but it reminds us that our current medical knowledge is the result of millennia of observation, experimentation, and refinement. What seems illogical now was once a logical conclusion drawn from limited information and a different worldview. It shows us how far we've come, from treating headaches with animal waste to understanding neurotransmitters and targeted pharmaceuticals. It also encourages a certain humility, reminding us that future generations might look back at some of our current practices with similar bemusement. Historians still argue about the precise turning points that led to more empirically based medical practices, suggesting a gradual rather than sudden shift. Furthermore, ancient Egyptian medicine, with its blend of physical remedies and magical beliefs, reminds us of the holistic nature of health. While modern medicine often focuses on specific physiological mechanisms, the ancients instinctively understood that well-being wasn't just about the body, it was also about the mind and spirit. The placebo effect, which we now acknowledge and study, was likely a powerful, if unacknowledged, component of their cures. The comfort derived from ritual, the reassurance from a trusted healer, and the belief in divine intervention all played a role in the healing process. This integrated approach, though rooted in different concepts, echoes modern movements towards mindfulness, stress reduction, and patient-centered care. The records left by these ancient scribes and physicians also provide an invaluable historical archive. Without their meticulous documentation on papyrus, we would be left with a much poorer understanding of daily life, disease patterns, and the intellectual achievements of one of the world's greatest civilizations. These texts aren't just medical treatises, they are cultural artifacts that offer insights into their cosmology, their societal structure, and their deeply held beliefs. So, your headache, however uncomfortable, has inadvertently led you to a deeper appreciation of ancient history. Finally, the sheer audacity and creativity of some of these cures reminds us that human ingenuity in the face of adversity knows no bounds. To look at a formidable animal like a crocodile and see not just a predator, but a source of medicine is a truly remarkable leap of thought. It's a testament to the persistent human drive to find solutions, to alleviate suffering, and to navigate the complexities of life and death, even if those solutions seem utterly bewildering from our modern vantage point. So next time you have a headache, take a moment to be grateful for modern painkillers and perhaps spare a thought for the peculiar ingenuity of the ancient Egyptians. As our journey through ancient Egyptian medicine gently draws to a close, and with your ancient headache hopefully a distant memory, let's allow the strange and dusty specifics to recede, leaving behind a softer, more reflective understanding. We've explored a world where health was fragile, and remedies were born of ingenuity, observation, and a profound connection to the natural and spiritual realms. Imagine the quiet of the Egyptian twilight, the sun sinking below the horizon, casting long shadows over the desert sands. The day's aches and fevers begin to fade, replaced by the soft hum of the night. Perhaps a cool breeze drifts in from the Nile, bringing with it the faint scent of damp earth and blooming papyrus. Your body, weary from the day's labor, yearns for peace, for the gentle embrace of sleep, finally free from the persistent thrumming behind your eyes. The curious remedies we've discussed tonight, the crocodile dung, the willow bark, the whispered incantations, were all part of a larger, timeless human effort to find comfort in discomfort, to seek solace in suffering. They remind us that for thousands of years, long before the marvels of modern science, people faced the same fundamental challenges of pain and illness, finding solace in solutions in ways that now seem utterly fantastical, yet were entirely logical within their own understanding of the universe. As you drift now, let the detailed images of ancient treatments soften, becoming simply echoes of a world-long past. Feel the gentle rhythm of the narration, like the soft, steady flow of the Nile itself, carrying you away from the worries of the day. The weight of history, once a curious burden, transforms into a comforting blanket, inviting relaxation. Remember that ancient world where the boundaries between magic and medicine blurred, where every creature and plant held a secret, and where a persistent headache could lead to the most extraordinary cures. This journey wasn't just about facts, it was about immersing yourself in a different way of experiencing the world, a slower pace, a different kind of logic. The goal here, after all, wasn't to cure your actual headache, but to gently guide you into a state of calm, to fill your mind with just enough quiet wonder that the busy thoughts of your day can slowly, gracefully dissipate. Let the echoes of ancient Egypt, the rustle of papyrus, the soft lapping of the Nile, the quiet murmur of forgotten remedies ease you into a deep and peaceful rest.